So I want to ask one more question with respect to the debt issue, because most of this
Yes.
podcast we were talking about China refusing to pay back the debt that it owes the U.S. And then on the flip side of that, obviously, China has bought a tremendous amount of American debt, and the U.S. is paying $70 million of interest a day on that debt, sending it to China. Um, so could China though just decide to sell that debt, that those American treasuries it owns, and just use that to wreck the U.S. economy if the U.S. pushes too hard on the other debt?
Well, they're already, if you look at 2 years ago, they had over $1 trillion of our debt. And then last year it became 950 billion. And then this year it's 850 billion. So already they're looking at their exposure to US debt and diversifying. So I think that's already happening anyway. I don't think that we're in a place where they could do that, but that would be a meltdown for them as well as it would be for us. They are already they're taking the necessary steps to lose their exposure to U.S. sovereign debt already. So I think that's something that's already in hand on the Chinese side. And I think we need to take this more seriously and use this selective defaulted sovereign debt on the part of Chinese whilst we can. And now is the time.
So you're saying that China can't just quickly sell off the rest of the U.S. debt because that's going to cause other problems in China.
It would cause a huge problem globally, but of course we would retaliate. I mean, that's, you know, that's, I there's a lot of things that we could do as well. Like, for example, take away PNTR status, which of course would increase the rate, the tax on goods coming from China to 30 to 50%. I wouldn't recommend doing that either. There's a lot of, we could go to an economic war and it could effectively, we'd have mutually assured destruction. So again, I like bills and I like people who say, yes, let's think about removing PNTR as our China paper recommends, the new China paper the Heritage Foundation's put out, where we would do so in concert with allies. These things cannot be taken unilaterally, in my opinion. It should not be taken unilaterally by the United States alone. We do need to work with other allies. We need to work with, for example, the Netherlands to make sure that they're not selling critical technology with regards to elite chip making. We don't want that technology transferred from the Netherlands to the People's Republic of China. They would very much like that. So again, we need to do this in concert with other allies. And I think that's, for example, we could work with allies at the WTO on something like permanent normal trade relation status. There's a lot of things we can and should be doing. I'm a bit concerned by bills that have come out in Congress, and I say this personally, and I'm not naming any names, where there's a bit of a cowboys attitude where we're just going to just do this. And then there's no thinking about, well, have we consulted some allies in this? Because if we do that, then they're just going to find another market somewhere else. If we do this unilaterally, they'll just sell their stuff elsewhere or they'll do business somewhere else. We actually need to work globally. I actually take the personal view that we should actually be involved, as Britain has just joined the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. I think we should be in there, A, to keep China out, and also to be a part of the building of that organization. Just as we renegotiated NAFTA, which is now, of course, in the United States, USMCA, or as they call it in Canada, CUSMA, we renegotiated NAFTA under President Trump, and we addressed issues that the Trump administration found to be problematic. And the Biden administration has actually kept a lot of those trade policies. And so we could actually renegotiate the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the parts that are unpalatable to us. So I do take a measured approach to international relations. I don't believe there's a lot of things we could all do that would cause a financial meltdown. And I don't think any of us want that. But we need to start getting serious about friendshoring and decoupling and nearshoring. I've advised companies, for example, one company recently, I will not name, exposed by 65% China, I'm thinking, well, perhaps you need to open up to other markets. As an American company, perhaps you need to open up to other markets and bring some of that business closer to home or with our allies. From my personal point of view, and I believe that this is also largely the position of the Heritage Foundation, we're largely a free trade organization, but not with foreign adversaries. And I think President Trump told us that, and that policy has really been kept by the Biden administration, whereby we shouldn't have free trade with foreign adversaries. And the top of that list is China, but foreign adversaries, I'm talking about foreign adversaries defined in U.S. law: China, Russia, Belarus, Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, etc. So there's a list of them that you can easily Google. And I don't believe in having free trade with those countries. I think these are countries that do not abide by international finance law. And I want to preserve the integrity of international finance law.
Well, it seems that right now, too, it's a very special time because the Chinese economy, after zero COVID, GDP growth is way down, youth unemployment is through the roof. China right now is in a tremendously weak economic position that could be used to solve a lot of these issues.
That's a lot's been written on that, and I totally agree with you. I think that they're not as strong as we feel. For example, we've seen this in the past. When any country embraces more of a hardline socialist or communist approach, the result is always failure. Name me any country where pure socialism or communism has ever succeeded long term, and it doesn't. It's one of those very resilient. These are resilient ideologies that continually are tried, and in every generation, there's someone who passionately believes them in like a religion. And everywhere they've ever been tried, they fail. And I remember, lots of friends of mine at university who were members of the Revolutionary Communist Party and what have you. They're now working at the banks. Some of them are now working at investment banks in London. How did that work out for you, that communism? But so I think that what the president of China is going to do is increasingly make his country weaker by going towards these hardline policies. And hopefully, as their system falters and their social safety net falters, which is an important contract with your people, then maybe they'll have some civil unrest, and maybe the people will rise up. And I think we should be encouraging that. I mean, sometimes people have to develop their own organic solutions to their own problems.
Oh, I think that was the big lesson at the end of zero COVID, when so many people in China actually stood up and protested Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party itself. So it could be a situation.
I don't think also, if I can say that, I don't think that we should be imposing Western values and democracy at the point of a gun, like we perhaps have tried in some developing countries, perhaps in Afghanistan. I do think countries have to develop their own organic solutions. And I'm not suggesting we try to impose this, but we certainly can encourage it through other means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it could be a situation where, just like with the Soviet Union, to some people it seemed to fall overnight. Yeah. The same thing could happen with the Chinese Communist Party.
Because, of course, in the Soviet Union, it was imposed not by the will of the people, but at the point of a gun. So I would not encourage imposing communism and socialism at the point of a gun any more than I would impose Western capitalism and liberal democracy.
The funny thing is, communism pretty much always is imposed at the end of a gun.
Yeah. I mean, it might take, for example, one election to bring a group in power, but then they abolish that process so they don't leave power. And then it becomes the point of a gun.
That's true. That's true. Fun.
Indeed.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. For anyone watching, I'll put a link below to the article. It's a fantastic read. But where else can they follow you? Maybe learn more about what you've worked on or what the Heritage Foundation is doing vis-a-vis China?
Yes. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Drew Hale DC on Twitter, or you can reach me at the Heritage Foundation website.
All right, fantastic. I think it was a great sign that your article got so much traction, and people seem to be interested in finding ways to counter the Chinese Communist Party, and it doesn't have to go to nukes.
No, let's avoid that at all possible. There are lots of things we can do to address this issue in a measured approach.